What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another video. And in this video, we want to talk about the subject of riding downhill. So this subject that we got for y'all, man, is AKA flowing, right? So a lot of times, man, how can we transition from one outlet to the next? You know what I'm saying? Like when we're just going through and doing what we're doing, say like maybe on the basketball court, and we just grinding, and we, gain so much altitude, so much momentum, we work out every day. Of course, we in the lab every day, and of course we doing what we're doing every day. But all of a sudden now we got to change to a whole different perspective and get into a whole entirely new outlet, whether it may be art or whether it be behind an office desk, or maybe it be something else that we just supposedly have to do, cooking or whatever it might be, right? So how do we make that transition? How do we make that switch from flowing, from being a basketball player, or being an athlete, someone who works out every day, and transitioning to another field with a bunch of different more mechanics to it? So the main important thing that we want to look at, right, is when we are transitioning to another field, especially when something is not as physical or not as mentally draining, in a certain way as, basketball or being an athlete or working out every day, right? The most important thing is not to slow down. I always like to use the concept of riding a bicycle. Because when you ride the bike, you know how when you go uphill, you got to use all this momentum and all this force, and you're exerting all this energy going uphill. And it requires so much muscle force to get uphill, right? But then once you go downhill, all this momentum is carrying you, and it's almost as if you're going too fast and you're out of control, right? The important thing to realize with this is that how do you hit those turns, right? How do you go downhill and maybe the road curves, in a very, very deep way, and you got to be able to hit that turn? What would be the mechanics of you being able to hit that turn? Would it be to slow down? Would it be to speed up? No, it wouldn't be to slow down, because if you try to slow down going into a turn, coming downhill, you're not going to be able to hit that turn because you're too out of control, right? On a bicycle, the most important thing to do is not to slow down, but rather to speed up. Is actually rather to flow into the turn. That's the only way you'll be able to actually make the turn properly and continue to keep rolling through, right? Because if you try to slow down, and if you try to make the turn and try to be too technical with how you make that turn, you're gonna slip and fall. You're gonna run off course, and you're not gonna make that turn. It's gonna end badly. Most important thing to do is to focus on the actual motion of flowing through the turn, right? So rather, instead of focusing on slowing down to hit the turn in a technical way, keep your mind on actually flowing through the turn and actually getting through that turn. So rather, instead of, as we said, slowing down, you would have to speed up in order to actually get through that turn. All right, so now I want to bring an art concept up to y'all, right? So now we're going to talk about the size concept. I know if some of you who've been listening to me know that I've said this before, with the size concept, what it basically means is to take what you need and leave the rest. Basically what the size concept means is you want to be able to make things smaller in order for it to fit into the frame right. So as you're drawing, sometimes you have to make some things bigger and some things smaller than others in order for everything to fit into the frame correctly. So the size concept basically just means, so what is most important, what is most valuable, and what isn't as valuable, right? And let's focus on making these things bigger and putting everything into proper size, correct? So the important thing to realize in the size concept is that, especially when we talk about our lives, I mean, I know me specifically, it's when we get into specific outlets and we have things that we want to do. I know me specifically, I want to be able to create so many different things, but it requires me to fall in line with so many different outlets, right? When you're someone who has so many ideas, right, it's important to be able to actually fall in line with those outlets to be able to actually bring it about correctly, right? See, the thing about God, right, and the thing about us and, just how things function, right, is he wants us to be able to be ourselves, become ourselves within outlets, right? That's one of the most important things to be able to do, right? In terms of being ourselves, it's not always about creating this one individual or us getting out of alignment and trying to create something completely brand new, right? It's using what God used other people to create and flowing through those outlets, and becoming ourselves within these outlets that God has already created. So this right here is what I believe this is what allows us to be ourselves, and it's the same way in which that God speaks to us. He speaks to us through our own outlets, and I think that's the way that God wants us to be when we get into our outlets, or when we get into what we want to do, right? Is to be able to get into these outlets that God has already created, experience these outlets, and then being able to flow through these outlets in our own way, in our own creative way. And I think a lot of times that, especially us really creative people with, like just really creative personalities, and, people like us, like we struggle so much in order to get our ideas out, in order to get, what we have about ourselves out. It's because we haven't really embraced what God has already created and have been able to, and just be able to flow through these outlets, right? If we would just flow through these outlets that God has already created, we would be much more effective in being ourselves, one, and being able to just, create what we want to create and actually be most effective in what we want to do. And on top of that, being able to experience life, right? Because I know, that's the whole point. God wants what's best for us, right? And he wants things for us that we don't even know we want for ourselves, right? And one of those things, of course, would be, experiencing life, right? So, yeah, in this case, it would be experiencing life. So it is important for us to be able to flow through outlets and to be able to really embrace, and experience what God has already created. That's one of the most important things, not just trying to, do things on our own. And, there's a method to this and there's a lesson in this. There's a lesson in this, and that's, to be able to just experience and really appreciate, maybe, it's not even just about appreciating. Appreciating is important, but most importantly, experiencing and being a part of, the things that God has created. You know what I'm saying? So, and just flowing through and being ourselves through these outlets and through these things, right? So that's the most important thing, man. Just keeping an eye on what other people have created, right? And actually just learning about these things and just, functioning that way. And then through the things that other people have created, that is the best way, and that is how we can then, be ourselves and, do what we do that way. So, I'm gonna conclude this video right here. Hopefully this video has blessed somebody. Hopefully this video has blessed y'all, man. Stay tuned. It's your boy, Deep Art. And we coming back, man, in the Deep Art Functional Academy. I will catch y'all in the next video. Peace. We out. All love.